She was one of the girls who were flown to Jeffrey Epstein's island on his private jet. In her testimony, she described what happened on that plane, what she discovered before even setting foot on the island, and what she later experienced there. Events, she says, were deeply shocking. What stood out in her statement was her description of the guests she saw there. According to her, there were Israelis and Arabs sitting in the same place. This particular part, she said, was removed by some channels and websites that reported the story. Here, however, her testimony is presented in full as it appeared in the investigation records without omission. She began, I held a local Miss Beauty title in the state of Arizona, and like any girl my age, I dreamed of competing at higher levels. I was selected, along with a group of other girls, to participate in what we were told were very important auditions, ones that could change our lives. We were told the auditions would take place on that island. It never crossed my mind that we would be traveling by private jet. When we arrived at the airport, I expected a regular plane with normal seats. Instead, they took us directly to a private jet parked far from the gate. Just looking at it made my heart race. Inside, it was more luxurious than I imagined. Everything was carefully arranged, quiet, elegant. But something inside me didn't feel right. We weren't alone. There were men on board, familiar faces, some from politics, some from business, clearly important people, very important. The way they looked at us wasn't normal. Their smiles weren't normal. We were just young trainees, and they were older men sitting there confidently, like they knew what was going to happen more than we did. Some of them were openly inappropriate. That was my first warning sign, though at the time we didn't fully understand it. After a few minutes, we tried talking to them to ease the tension. One of them asked in a sarcastic tone why we were traveling. He already knew the answer. They all did. We told him we were heading to beauty pageant auditions. They exchanged quick looks and smiled. I didn't understand that smile then, but I do now. It was frightening. Soon after, they started getting closer to us in subtle ways, small gestures, small comments, but nothing felt comfortable. One of the girls sitting next to me was approached by a man who behaved in a way she didn't like. She refused him. I expected him to get angry or apologize. Instead, he smiled coldly and said, "You can refuse here, but on the island, it's different." That sentence alone made my blood run cold. We looked at each other and realized at the same moments that this wasn't a trip to a beauty competition. It was something else, something unknown and not normal at all. The plane was just the first door. The island was something else entirely. When we landed, I briefly thought my fears might have been exaggerated. The place was organized, professional, like a luxury hotel. Wide rooms, perfume in every hallway, everything suggested comfort and safety. For a moment, we believed it. But that calm was just a curtain, something dark hidden behind it. The next morning, we received the first call. Room number this, floor that, first audition time. We went in excited and nervous, still trying to convince ourselves this was for a pageant. At the designated floor, a staff member greeted us and said in a very formal tone, as if reading from a script, "The first audition requires you to stand as you came into this world, without anything, no clothes." Just like that, no explanation. We froze. We didn't know if this was some kind of physical assessment or something related to modeling, but she wasn't joking. She said it was a basic requirement, and anyone who refused could leave for the airport immediately, on her own responsibility. Why at our own responsibility? Why that tone? We were on an island. We didn't know anyone. We didn't feel brave enough to escape. Her voice left no room for questions. Inside the audition room, the truth started to show itself. It didn't look like any audition room I'd ever seen. No cameras, no evaluation forms, no women. Just a long table with men sitting behind it. Men in expensive suits, different ages. Some of them were the same men from the plane. It didn't feel professional. It felt like we were being examined, not evaluated. Their eyes moved from my head to my feet. Not the eyes of judges, but something else entirely. The questions they asked were personal, humiliating, unrelated to any professional skill. That was when I understood the smiles on the plane, the looks, everything. After that humiliating audition, we were invited to a private party at one of the island's mansions. It didn't feel optional. The mansion was extravagantly luxurious, golden chandeliers, shining floors. But beneath the beauty, something dark was there. I saw the same faces again, the businessmen from the plane, the so-called judges, public figures I'd seen on television. They whispered to each other. They nodded towards certain girls. I felt my dignity being pulled away piece by piece. One powerful man approached me and warned me against refusing anything. He said I was now in a world with different rules, and obedience was the only way to be treated like a human being. He didn't shout, he didn't threaten directly, but the way he spoke was worse than a threat. He gestured for me to go with a friend of his who was waiting. I wasn't asked, I wasn't given a choice. They led me down a private hallway. What happened after that is hard to describe, but in those moments, I lost what little sense I still had of being a person with a choice. When I left that room, I wasn't the same person who had walked in. After that night, I understood that this wasn't just an island. It was a system, a network. Everything was calculated. Who sees you, who approaches you, who chooses you, when you're allowed to move. I was far from my family, surrounded by predators in expensive suits. I learned quickly that survival didn't mean strength. It meant playing a role, smiling when required, speaking when required, acting obedient. Inside, I was collapsing. The days that followed weren't life, they were survival. Over time, I noticed something disturbing. Events we all see on television, official, respectable events, were part of something bigger. Beauty pageants, talent shows, auditions, on the surface they looked like opportunities. Behind the scenes, she claimed, they were something else. Girls from different states were offered attractive opportunities and then directed towards certain powerful men. On paper, everything looked professional. In reality, she believed the purpose was different. One of the most shocking claims she described involved youth talent programs associated with a major children's TV network. According to her, auditions were presented as opportunities for acting and singing, but a small group of girls of certain ages would allegedly be selected and transported privately to the island. Parents believed they were giving their daughters golden opportunities. Some of those girls, she said, were never the same again. Some disappeared from the public eye. Some struggled with deep psychological trauma and could not speak about what happened. She came to believe the island was not just a location, but part of a larger network, starting with respectable-looking events and ending in closed rooms. The guests on the island, she said, were also shocking. She claimed she saw figures from countries that are publicly hostile towards each other sitting together as if they were on the same team. Russians next to Ukrainians, Arab figures speaking easily with Israeli figures. Political divisions seemed to disappear at the island's gate. She described Epstein himself as the real source of fear, not because he yelled, but because he was cold in a way she had never seen. At night, the island would be filled with music, noise, chaos. Everyone would lose control, except him. He didn't drink, he didn't use substances. He liked to stay sober, watching, observing. He noticed weaknesses the way others noticed jewels. A single look from him could make a girl freeze. Ghislaine Maxwell, she said, was always present. She moved as if she knew everything, where we stood, what we said, even how we looked at each other. She watched us not to protect us, but to manage us, to shape us. There was something strange about their relationship. Not love, not partnership, more like a kind of obsessive loyalty. There was one exception, a Russian girl, extraordinarily beautiful. Epstein treated her differently. He didn't allow guests near her. That alone fueled rumors. Some believed she was special to him. Others believed she had powerful connections outside of the island. Then, one morning, the girl was gone. No suitcase, no goodbye, as if she had never existed. No one answered questions. After that, security increased, doors closed earlier, the atmosphere changed. People disappeared one by one. I don't know where she went. I don't know what happened to her. But I know one thing. If I hadn't escaped when I did, I would have been next.